Welcome to Breaking the Silence. This is a series, a bi-monthly series of vodcasts designed to discuss and debate the issues of equity, justice, diversity, and inclusion in the built environment. My name is Karen Compton, and I am your co-host.
And I'm Gabrielle Bullock, Principal and Director of Global Diversity for Perkins and Well. And today we're going to explore the issue of accountability through a series of questions that we've received. And if we don't get to your questions, it's not too late to submit them through LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. Did I forget anything?
Instagram. You can still submit them on Instagram,
so there we go.
Too. So whatever works for you, whatever social media platform works for you, submit your questions. So you ready? Let's go.
Ready.
Okay, question number 1. What can be said to emerging professionals who may not feel the confidence to challenge their firm leaders on being more vocal about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion?
You know, my empowering answer would be find the courage to say something to somebody in leadership. Because even if it's anonymous, right? And if you're going to stay there, and if this is of value to you, clearly there's a misalignment of values. And our profession and our careers are too precious to waste time in places where we don't feel value or future. So that's the short answer. The other piece would be, I would recommend that you find an ally within the organization, preferably someone senior to you, who will advocate for you and represent your voice.
And not just advocate for you as a singular, but advocate in the broader context. I think the whole idea of allyship is so incredibly important. This is not a journey that anybody is going to win on their own. It's truly a journey that we're all going to have to go together. And bringing along not just senior level individuals, but people who have some kind of authority and some kind of control, I think is really impactful.
Right. But if we're talking about a challenge where the organization is not even addressing it at all, that's really tough.
That's really hard.
Recognizing that it's a challenge or opportunity, depending on how you look at it, and then trying to figure out what to do about it is one thing, but when it's not even acknowledged, that's a tough place to be. That's a really tough place to be, because I think at that point you kind of look around and wonder, like you said earlier, is this a misalignment of values between my own personal values and where this potential firm is that I've chosen to kind of make my career? And the only other short answer would be, look at the kind of work that you do, and are your clients, is it becoming of value to your clients? Because if you can use the business case at last resort, you know, it shouldn't just be the business case.
That's true.
And that usually gets the attention of firm leaders.
It should be about creating culture.
Yes.
Okay, so we have another question. So the second question would be, should efforts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion be added to the job description of firm leaders?
I would say there should be JEDI leadership competencies described. Now, what that is, we could sit here all day and talk about it, but I think if you explore your current job descriptions and see where there's a gap or lack of mention of what equity is and how to build a more equitable culture and practice and firm, diversity, inclusion. So I think there are unique JEDI competencies that one should aspire to have as a leader of a firm.
I think you bring up a really good concept, so I'm going to throw out a crazy idea. So the Society of Human Resource Managers, I believe, acknowledges 47 different competencies, everything from client service to judgment, and those competencies tie to various job descriptions depending upon what the person is actually doing. I do think there's an opportunity here to give definition to the competency associated with justice, the competency associated with equity, the competency of diversity, and the competency of inclusion, and add those to that list, not just from a textbook case, from like the human resources perspective, but then I think the true litmus test is hiring people for those competencies.
Yes.
My experience, and you tell me if I'm wrong, in this industry, we have a tendency to hire people for their skills first and test the competencies later. That's just been my kind of experience.
Yes. And the definition of skills and talents in most job descriptions are pretty narrow and pretty textbook-ish.
Yeah.
Right? We don't describe the skill around listening, around being curious, around recognizing lived experiences from an individual who may be different than what you're used to hiring. And that's where I think if we're going to become more diverse and inclusive, that we must challenge the status quo even on our job descriptions and competencies. Otherwise, it'll just be the sameness.
Totally
right?
agree. But I would even take it even one step further and say, let's put all the job descriptions on the table and really truly recraft them. Because I do have a tendency to think that many of us kind of steal job descriptions from other firms. A job captain is a job captain. Oh, I saw this one and I'll use that one. But is that really what your expectations are of a job captain? Do you really want them to listen more? Do you really need them to be more inclusive? Right. Then I think the Band-Aid approach to job descriptions that we often take is the wrong place to start.
And let's face it, this is about a value,
a
core value.
Yeah.
It's not, I have skills 1 through 10 on this job description. So it's really the core value of JEDI and how those that are doing the interviewing communicate that to the candidate. So the candidate knows that it's important to the organization and vice versa, but you have to be able to talk about it.
That's
and
true.
Describe that value. And you can't get that from a job description.
No. I think you also can't, when you talk about the interview process, you have to really kind of look at your interview process and say, if you're going to ask people about their perspective through this JEDI lens, do the people who are sitting there doing the interviewing understand what that is, and do they even represent it? Because that's the other problem. I mean, I think I posted a cartoon a couple of weeks ago, and it was a cartoon of an African-American woman in front of a panel of 40 or so, 30 or so white executives, and underneath my caption said, "Can we please just not do this anymore?" I think if we're going to put it on a job description, if we're going to interview for it, then we also have to look at what is our recruitment process? What do our interview panels and processes look like? And is it 6 white guys and 1 applicant of color? And does that already set up a dynamic from the beginning that's just not inclusive to begin with? Although we're saying, hey, we want to include you. What we're doing and what we're saying are two very different things.
I just have to repeat status quo. Challenge the status quo, and that's challenge how you're recruiting.
Challenge how you're recruiting, I think, is a good one. Okay, so our third question, and I have a whole lot to say about this one.
Do I have the third question?
Yes.
Okay.
You have the third question.
How can firms be held more accountable for their lack of addressing subjects revolving around race relations and anti-racism?
I'm gonna go first this time, because
I'm gonna let you.
Because I have a long-term answer, and I have a short-term answer, and I really truly have a strong opinion on this. So short-term answer. Toni Morrison said that racism will continue to exist until it is no longer financially profitable or psychologically useful. At some point, I do believe that for all of us working within firms, working within practices, we have to look at what our own value system is and our own value set, and at some point call ourselves to task to say, my values do or do not align with the organization that I work for, and then make a choice, a difficult choice, to say this is no longer a place for me because I'm not going to be included, or there is not room for me at the table. At that point, as people slowly begin to leave and make a choice, that you are no longer the employer of choice, not just because you say you are the employer of choice, but because you really don't walk the talk and your values don't align with mine, it will no longer become financially profitable, and things will then change. So I would first and foremost say, if you are in an organization that is willing to move, great. But if you're in an organization who is not going to move, recognize what their values are, look at your values, and then align those two things and see if the answer is if the answer is going to be something very different for you personally.
Right. Well, I would add that until issues of racism and race relations is addressed in our code of ethics, if you will, of our profession, then it's going to be up to each firm and each organization to do what they see fit. Some may say, I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know I don't know right now if there is such a mechanism to hold firms accountable except for people.
Yeah.
Candidates, staff, senior people in the firm, but so the whole accountability thing is, we don't need another checklist.
No.
What we need is
because people just dodge the system.
That's right. You need a shift in behavior, in understanding, and in value.
And the creation of culture.
And I think, that first question about the emerging professionals, they have a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
They've already shown their power in bringing this conversation to light. From the protests, the diversity of the protests, from age, race. I mean, the writing is on the wall if we all take that voice that we used to propel it further within this profession. So the accountability, we should tackle that a little bit more, but it's not an easy fix.
No, I mean, I think what I struggle with, honestly, is that it's a patchwork approach. Each firm, as you pointed out, is going to be left to their own devices to determine what is and isn't accountable internally, and who is and isn't responsible. There really isn't a place or a space for people who feel as though microaggression is pervasive in a culture. There's really no place for them to kind of go and adjudicate that. They'll go to human resources, but if the culture doesn't support human resources doing anything about it, it really remains unchanged. Right. I would love, if I could dream my biggest dream, I would love at some point for maybe AIA or maybe a subset, I don't know, to come up with, design a center for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And really truly not just do things like track data, because while we do need to track data and truly understand how many professionals we have and what are the ethnicities and gender of those individuals, I think we also need to provide some kind of instruction and support to firms to be able to ensure that they are acting in a just and equitable manner, and be able to provide an approach that's not so patchwork around how to adjudicate, resolve issues that are happening within a firm around bias, conscious, unconscious, microaggression, even situations where you have clients who have said things that are absolutely inappropriate. And right now, there is no way to be able to do that. So I would love, if I could dream my largest dream, to be able to have that as a
Well, there's no universal way to do it.
No.
And yes, a center for diversity and inclusion would help. It would be that resource. But I would challenge every organization to have training or discussions around the very basic issues of discrimination, of equity, and of diversity, right? The other thing related to accountability, you know, the AIA Large Firm Roundtable Group has really embraced the change that we need to make. And so that's a huge support. I think peer pressure in our industry goes a long way. So if there's a majority of firms who have embraced this, and so far it's, you know, it's the beginning of the change, right? So we'll see about the action, but I think that will go some way in bringing everybody along and holding everyone accountable, because sooner or later, if we do this with, you know,
passion and intention,
that we will shift. We will shift the culture, we will shift the expectation, and we will shift the norm, the bar.
And that really is the goal. That really is the goal. Believe it or not, we're actually out of time.
Get out of here.
I know, right? So as usual, I want to thank you. I always appreciate you for our discussion and our debate. I want to thank IBI Group for their support on this journey, for their sponsorship, and for allowing us to be part of their space and allow us to continue this conversation.
And I want to thank you, Ms. Karen, my co-host, and our followers. And it's not too late to join the conversation on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I think I got all the platforms that time.
You did.
And so join us next time as we continue our difficult conversations around race, equity, diversity, inclusion, and justice. And we keep changing the order of those things, if that's okay.
That's okay. Thank you.